lots of good work that you'll hear more about. Most importantly for today's meeting, you do find a new hopefully meeting button right on the front page of the website that you can click directly into this meeting. You'll also find access through our agenda, which has a hyperlink as we've traditionally used. And if you have any challenges today or questions about the website, you can email the FSEC staff who are at website help, WEBSITEHELP at fsec.wa.gov. And folks will be monitoring that mailbox. So if anyone has any access issues for this meeting, certainly welcome to use those tools. And also just acknowledge that today's launch was originally not at the same time of the FSEC council meeting. Those have moved, and appreciate the public and our participants in the meeting, as well as staff accommodating a schedule change and members of the council as well. So with that, if the clerk would call the roll, please.
Certainly. Department of Commerce.
Elizabeth Osborne, present.
Department of Ecology.
Eli Levitt, present.
Department of Fish and Wildlife.
Dee Hamplin, present.
Department of Natural Resources.
Lenny Young, present.
Utilities and Transportation Commission.
Stacy Brewster, present.
Local government and optional state agencies for the Hop Hill Project, Benton County. Paul Crouppen. For the Carriger Solar Project, Klickitat County, Matt Childs. For the Wallula Gap Project, Benton County, Adam File. For the Goldendale Best Project, Skagit County, Robbie Eckroth.
Robbie Eckroth, present.
Assistant Attorney Generals, John Thompson.
Present.
Zach Packer.
Present.
Alia Tuitt. For FSEC staff, I will call those anticipated to speak today. Sonia Bumpus.
Present.
Amy Hofkemeyer.
Present.
Amy Moon.
Amy Moon, present.
Sean Green.
John Green, present.
Lance Caputo.
Present.
Joanne Snarsky.
Present.
Trevin Taylor.
Present.
Dave Walker.
Present.
For operational updates, Kittitas Valley Wind Project.
Jared Cassidy, present.
Wild Horse Wind Power Project.
Jennifer Galbraith, present.
Grays Harbor Energy Center.
Chris Sharon, present.
The Halis Generation Facility.
Jeremy Smith, present.
Columbia Generating Station.
Josh Laporte, present.
Columbia Solar.
Elizabeth Drachenberg, present.
Goose Prairie Solar.
Nelson Jab, present.
Austria Solar.
John Volts, present.
Is there anyone online for the Council for the Environment?
Yuri Karol, present, and my colleague Sarah Reineveld will be joining in a little bit.
You, Chair, there is a quorum for all councils.
Thank you, Ms. Barker. Next item up, obviously, is the proposed agenda. And please note at the outset that there's an intent on our other items for the delegation authority to welcome Mr. Childs.
Thank you. Sorry I'm late.
No, you're right on time. Right on time. See, thanks for being with us here today.
Yes, it's an important day.
And if you need any materials as you come in here, obviously staff certainly will fix you up as need be. So, sorry. So back to the agenda. I just wanted to note that the delegation of authority item, the other section number 6, intent to just have that be a briefing and council questions or discussion today, but not an intent to act. So I just wanted to note that for the benefit of the public at the outset and fellow council. With that, I would entertain a motion to approve proposed agenda.
Lenny Young, so moved.
Second. You, Councilman Pamplin. All in favor of adopting the agenda as proposed, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda is adopted. Next up, we have actually 2 minutes for adoption and any discussion. So we'll put each into motion and on the table and open up for any discussion. So I would entertain a motion for the May 5th Carriger Solar special meeting minutes. Is there a motion? Giles, is there a second?
Elizabeth Osborne, second.
Thank you. Any discussion or edits to the minutes?
I have two small items.
Please.
Line number 7, page 46. It should read smoke, not spoke. And
Beckett. I apologize. This is Andrea Grantham. We're having a little bit of technical difficulty, so we're going to switch from Miss Barker's laptop to my laptop really quick.
Okay.
So there's going to be a little bit of a quick switch online. So give us like 2 minutes and I should be able to get
Okay,
switched
so
over.
we'll pause for the benefit
Yes.
of those
Thank you so
participating.
much.
Of course.
Okay, Chair, I believe we're good to go. Are we on the first set of minutes?
We are, and thank you. Thank you for the redundancy, getting us running again. We have an adoption of the minutes on the table, and Council Childs had two changes to the Carriger Solar minutes, which are the item on the table, just for clarity. Number 7, I think, and smoke.
I am going to withdraw my changes because I cannot find them in the document after all. So I think my notes are in error.
Okay, well, I'm sure if there's other ultimate clarification needed, we can capture that.
Capture that, yeah.
Okay, well then, are there other discussion or comments to the Carriger Solar meeting minutes of May 5th? Okay, hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, minutes are adopted. The next item up, May 21st, 2025, monthly meeting minutes from our regular council meeting. Could I have a motion to adopt the minutes?
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the May 21st, 2025 monthly meeting minutes.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Lenny Young, second.
Any discussion or changes to the monthly regular meeting on the 21st of May? Okay, hearing none. All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are adopted. Next up, we have our project updates, and we will move to Kittitas Valley Wind Project. Mr. K-State.
Yeah, good afternoon, Chair Beckett, FSEC Council and staff. This is Jared Cassidy with EDP Renewables. For the Kittitas Valley Wind Power Project, we had nothing non-routine report for the period.
Thank you, Mr. K-State. Next up, Wild Horse Wind Power Project. Jennifer
Yes,
Galbraith.
thank you, Chair. Yep, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Chair, thank you, Chair Beckett, FSEC Council and staff. This is Jennifer Galbraith with Puget Sound Energy representing the Wild Horse Wind Facility, and I have nothing non-routine to report for the month of May.
Thank you. Next up, Chehalis Generation Facility.
Good afternoon, Chair Beckett, council members, and FSEC staff. This is Jeremy Smith, the operations manager representing the Chehalis Generation Facility. There are no non-routine items to report for this period.
Grace Harbor Energy Center, Chris Sharon.
Afternoon, Chair Beckett, council members and staff. Grays Harbor Energy Center also has nothing non-routine to report for the month of May.
Thank you very much. Next up, Columbia Solar, Elizabeth Drachenberg.
Good afternoon, Chair, Council and staff. This is Liz Drachenberg for Columbia Solar. There are no non-routine updates to report for May.
Thank you. Next up, Columbia Generating Station and WNP 104, Josh Laporte, please.
Good afternoon, Chair Beckett and FSEC Council and staff. This is Josh Laporte representing the Columbia Generating Station and Washington Nuclear Projects 1 and 4. The facility update is included in your packet for both sites, and there's no non-routine updates to report for the month of May. I would just point out that I think that the facility updates on the screen are actually for the month of April, however. But I'll also just bring up for the council's awareness, the Columbia Generating Station was recently brought back online from our refueling outage 27. And during system checks, a vibration in the turbine was observed that required the plant be taken back offline to address that issue safely. This is a planned maintenance procedure and is similar to a balance that was performed in December 2021. That's all I have for Columbia Generating Station and WNP 1 and 4.
Appreciate the update as well as certainly the extra wave of activity that goes with the team there at Energy Northwest. So congratulations on that process. Next up, Goose Prairie Solar, Nelson Gia.
Good afternoon, everybody. For month of April, we had about 19, almost 2,000 megawatt hours of generation. We did some fan power supply replacements that occurred on the inverter units that ultimately failed. Many of the inverter units continue to experience similar faults or neutral point shift errors, so we're continuing to work with SunGrow to kind of fix those issues. Otherwise, no other major comments from an environmental or safety compliance perspective.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, Austria Solar, John Volz.
Good afternoon. This is John Volz with Cypress Creek Renewables, representing Austria Solar. I would also like to comment that I believe these updates are from the previous month, representing the period for April. I have the report for May identified or pulled up on my end. I can provide those updates. We are continuing with construction. Road construction is 95% complete. Inverter and array pile installation is ongoing throughout the facility. Racking installation has begun. Fencing is up for 90% in the east portion, about 40% in the west. AC cable installs looking at about 80% complete. Our substation construction is underway. Foundations are being poured. And we have started to receive modules that are being prepped for installation. There was one incident that occurred in the month of May on the 27th. There was a diesel fuel spill that was caused due to incorrect process being followed during fueling the tank of a employee vehicle. We have remediated the incident. The cleanup has been performed. We are pending to receive the final report from Patriot, but that has been mitigated. Those are all the updates for Austria Solar for the period of May.
Thank you very much. For both projects, we've highlighted the April versus later update. I believe I read a correct version this morning, but if we could make sure the website record obviously have the current report would be great. Next up, we have Carriger Solar, and Joanne Snarsky and Sean Green will be presenting on this topic.
Thank you, Chair Beckett and council members. My name is Joanne Snarsky, the siting specialist for SSEC. And as suggested, I will be giving the presentation today alongside Sean Green, our State Environmental Policy Act specialist assigned to Carriger. The purpose of this presentation is to describe to the council the developments that went into the draft site certification agreement, or SCA, as a result of discussions with the Yakima Nation, explain the development of the revised mitigated determination of non-significance, or RMDNS, summarize the comments received during these public comment campaigns for these documents, and finally to explain the minor changes that staff plan on including in the final versions of these documents as a result of comments. As a brief recap of the project, Carriger Solar is a proposed 160 megawatt solar only generation facility with a 63 megawatt battery energy storage system that is to be located on 2,108 acres of privately owned land approximately 2 miles west and northwest of the city of Goldendale in unincorporated Klickitat County. The project itself will occupy no more than 1,326 acres that will contain all the project components. Since the last council meeting, several important events have occurred in relation to the certification process for the Carriger project. First, the FSEC chair had a confidential meeting with the Yakima Nation Tribal Council on June 4th. This meeting provided the Yakima Nation an opportunity to directly discuss concerns related to environmental and cultural impacts that would result from the development of the Carriger project in a venue where sensitive tribal information could be discussed without risk of public disclosure. Chair Beckett prepared a confidential memo covering the topics discussed and how FSEC had responded. This memo has been provided to all the council members. At the previous council meeting on May 21st, 2025, staff were directed to develop a draft recommendation for approval of the Carriger project that could be sent to the governor for consideration. That direction required us to include all mitigation that was proposed in the MDNS and the then projected RMDNS, and any mitigation that may arise from the June 4th meeting with the Yakima Nation Tribal Council. Following the FSEC Council meeting, staff began to draft the site certification agreement and a report to the governor that goes along with the draft SCA. The report describes important details of the application process and how the council has come to request approval of the project. The draft SCA was also refined to address several of the Yakima Nation's concerns following the June 4th meeting. Both the draft SCA and the draft recommendation report were published for public comment on June 12th. Additionally, the revised mitigated determination of significance, reflecting the edits covered in the last council meeting, along with a few others that will be covered later in this presentation, was published for public comment on June 16th. I'm going to pass it over to Sean to get into more detail.
Thank you. FSEC staff determined that many of the concerns raised by the Yakima Nation Tribal Council in the June 4th meeting were addressed in the RMDNS or the draft site certification agreement. There were, however, two specific concerns that staff subsequently addressed by adding measures to the draft SCA prior to its publication. The first was a request by the Yakima Nation Tribal Council that they be provided the opportunity to review the site restoration plan for the project prior to its implementation to ensure that any impacted resources of tribal concern would be effectively addressed and restored. Staff added language to the SCA committing FSEC to coordinating with the Yakima Nation on both the initial site restoration plan, which would be produced prior to the start of construction, and the detailed site restoration plan, which will be produced prior to the start of decommissioning. The second issue that staff addressed following the meeting was a concern expressed by the Yakima Nation Tribal Council that the project may result in the loss of existing legal land access by tribal members. In Washington, tribes have reserved treaty rights, including access rights, on many public lands, and can also develop access agreements with private landowners. While this project is exclusively located on privately owned lands with no existing tribal access agreements, FSEC has included language within the draft SCA that would require the applicant to ensure tribal access to public lands be retained throughout construction. While no loss of legal land access for tribal members as a result of this project is anticipated, this condition would prevent any such scenario from occurring unexpectedly. All of this language was included within the version of the draft SCA that was published for public comment. The revised mitigated determination of non-significance that was published on June 16th included 5 changes from the original MDNS. The first of these changes was one that we covered in the last council meeting regarding the battery chemistry used for the project's BESS. The mitigation language requires that the applicant assess all widely commercially available battery chemistries available for BESSes when the project's BESS is proposed for replacement and submit their comparative report and recommendation to FSEC for approval. Staff determined that this was the most effective mitigation available to address concerns associated with adverse environmental and public health impacts in the event of a BESS fire, given the alternative BESS chemistry technologies are not sufficiently developed at this time. The second revision between the MDNS and the RMDNS focused on the mitigation associated with laydown yard setbacks. In the MDNS, NSRs, or noise-sensitive receptor sites, we're provided with a 2,500-foot setback from all laydown yards, which are temporary yards holding construction equipment during the construction phase of the project. The applicant provided figures to FSEC showing that due to the dispersed nature of this project, such a mitigation measure would prohibit the siting of a laydown yard in the majority of the lease boundary and challenge the feasibility of constructing the project. Washington Administrative Code, or WAC 197-11-661C, is that when developing mitigation under SEPA substantive authority, mitigation shall be, quote, reasonable and capable of being accomplished. FSEC staff determined that the implementation of this measure as written did not meet either of those requirements. In contrast to other projects that FSEC has reviewed, where one or two large laydown yards have been proposed that would be in operation throughout the entire construction phase, the Carragher project proposes a single primary laydown yard and several smaller ancillary laydown yards that will each contain a small portion of the project's construction materials and will only be in use for a portion of the construction phase. Staff developed revisions to this mitigation measure that would provide non-participating noise-sensitive receptor sites with a 1,200-foot setback from primary laydown yards, which is consistent with the setbacks that FSEC has previously imposed on projects similar in scale and type to the Carragher project. Ancillary laydown yards, meaning those that contain less than 20% of the project's equipment and materials, would be set back by 800 feet in recognition that they will have less activity over a shorter period of time when compared to primary laydown yards. The third revision is another one that we covered in the last council meeting, though the language has changed some between then and the publication of the RMDNS. To address concerns that had been raised with the visual aesthetic impacts from the project when viewed from the northern boundary of the adjacent DNR-owned parcel, mitigation has been developed requiring the installation of natural screening infrastructure along the half-mile shared border. In the previous council meeting, we had presented this measure as requiring intermittent earthen berms along this boundary. In further discussions with the applicant and Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, staff determined that a combination of natural screening measures, such as earthen berms, rock piles, and native vegetation, would be more cost-effective, less impactful to other resources such as wildlife movement and water runoff, and be more effective at blending the screening into the existing viewshed. The final design of this natural screening infrastructure will be submitted to FSEC for approval prior to the start of construction. The fourth revision is primarily administrative and reflects draft language that was inadvertently left in the published version of the MDNS. The portion of this mitigation measure that was removed in the RMDNS was determined by staff prior to the publication of the MDNS as leaving the measure too open-ended, making it impractical and unenforceable. The final revision is another one that we discussed at the last council meeting. This measure is new for the RMDNS and would require the installation of a 10,000-gallon water cistern to assist in potential fire suppression. Following the chair's meeting with the Yakama Nation, this measure was further developed prior to its publication to address concerns raised by the Yakama Nation that the cistern would serve as could serve as a source of contamination to nearby ground and water resources if the cistern were to experience algal growth or be improperly maintained. In response to those concerns, staff added language requiring that the cistern be opaque and enclosed to avoid the potential for algal growth and be kept maintained in good working order. The RMDNS was published for public comment, and a total of 16 comments were received, 1 from the Yakama Nation, 1 from the applicant, and 14 from members of the public. 6 of these comments were statements of general opposition to the project, 1 was a statement of general support for the project, and the remaining 9 were substantive comments addressing impacts and mitigation described in the RMDNS. The substantive comments generally express sentiments that the RMDNS mitigation for a variety of environmental resource impacts were insufficient, with fire hazard, visual aesthetics, and loss of farmland being the most common resource areas mentioned. Staff received 1 comment from the applicant regarding a minor clarification edit for a mitigation measure that staff proposed to include in a final version of the RMDNS. The applicant comment came in regard to the natural screening mitigation that had been added to the original RMDNS. The original version of this mitigation had required intermittent earthen berms, and the final version was conceived of as composed of a variety of natural screening implements installed periodically along a 0.5-mile buffer boundary between the project and the northern border of the adjacent DNR parcel. The applicant requested that the word periodically be added to this mitigation measure to clarify that this structure will be visual screening, not a full visual barrier, so as to better blend in with the existing view shed. As this change is in keeping with how this mitigation was envisioned and appropriately reflects its intended application, staff plan to incorporate this word in the final version of this text. Staff also published the draft SCA and recommendation report for public comment, with a total of 7 comments received. 1 comment was received from the Yakima Nation, 1 was received from the applicant, and the remaining 5 originated from members of the public. Of these 7 comments, 2 were general statements in opposition to the project, and the remaining 5 were substantive in addressing the documents in question. After reviewing all of the comments, staff determined that no substantial edits were needed to either the SCA or recommendation report to address comments received, apart from minor grammatical edits and typo corrections. While the visual screening mitigation comment is the only one for which staff proposed revisions, there were several other substantive comments received that staff believes should be shared with the council to clarify why staff did not propose revisions. The first of these is a comment received from the Yakima Nation. I have summarized it here as the total content of the comment was too long for the slide, but the council should have the Yakima Nation's full letter in their packet to see the comment in its entirety. In essence, however, the Yakima Nation argued that FSEC's environmental analysis of water resource impacts from water use is incomplete and cannot be complete until the applicant has an effective contract with a specific supplier. FSEC generally requires that a project legally secure sufficient water for project needs prior to the start of construction, not as a condition for initial project approval. Water leases are typically term-based, and requiring an applicant to pay for the use of water months or years prior to its anticipated use is seen as impractical. The applicant has stated that sufficient water to supply the project has been identified from local vendors and confirmed that they plan on purchasing the water for the project from one of these providers. As these vendors have existing executed water rights and the project will not involve any new withdrawal, diversion, or retention of water, there's no anticipated new increase in total or consumptive water use within the regional aquifer. The draft SCA does require that the applicant secure legal water use prior to the start of construction and prior to any use during operations. If the project is, for whatever reason, unable to secure legal water use, they would not be allowed to start construction, would be out of compliance with the SCA, and would be subject to additional mitigation. For these reasons, staff had determined that the environmental analysis of water resource impacts within the RMDNS is complete. The second substantive comment that staff believe is worth discussing also came from the Yakima Nation. In summation, the Yakima Nation argues that FSEC's TCP mitigation, that is traditional cultural property, is insufficient to address significant impacts, that FSEC's determination is based on personal opinion rather than the Yakima Nation's professional findings, and that some of the TCP mitigation was prepared without the Yakima Nation's input. As to the statement that FSEC substituted the personal opinions of its staff in place of the professional findings of the Yakima Nation in determining the effectiveness of this proposed mitigation, this is fundamentally incorrect. FSEC used the Bureau of Land Management's visual contrast rating process, which is one of the most conventional, widely used systems for assessing visual impacts, to make its determinations of both impact rating and mitigation effectiveness. Staff also worked with technical experts in this field provided by our consultants at WSP through all phases of our environmental analysis. As we developed and refined the mitigation, the applicant provided multiple series of digital visual simulations at FSEC's direction, showing how the project would look when viewed from multiple key observation points at a variety of setbacks and configurations. With all of that said, visual impact determinations are necessarily qualitative in nature, meaning there is no numerical way to fully capture the analysis. This, as a result, makes the process inherently subjective at its core, meaning that some element of personal opinion for any person making these determinations is unavoidable. FSEC made use of the most widely used visual mitigation practices when developing the measures used within the RMDNS and draft SCA, including methods such as setbacks and visual screening. Some of these measures, were in fact developed without input from the Yakima Nation. This is an old version. While many of these measures were developed in concert with the Yakima Nation's input, some were developed independently by FSEC. In a meeting in November of in February of this year, the FSEC staff met with the Yakima Nation staff to discuss potential mitigation strategies for TCPs on this project. In that meeting, the Yakima Nation staff indicated that their perspective was that the mitigation strategy proposed by them in their TCP survey summary provided in December of 2024 was the minimum amount of mitigation necessary to effectively mitigate for TCP impacts. As FSEC was unable to impose some of the measures proposed by the Yakima Nation, FSEC staff proposed alternative mitigation strategies for which the Yakima Nation staff indicated any strategy that did not incorporate all of their recommendations would be insufficient for TCP impacts. FSEC staff maintained their determination that this mitigation and applicant commitments that have been included in the RMDNS and draft SCA are sufficient to reduce TC impacts to a level below significance as defined by SEPA. The final substantive comment received during the comment period comes from the applicant and addresses a section of the draft SCA dealing with financial assurances for eventual site restoration. One of FSEC's requirements is that applicants secure enough funds to fully cover the costs associated with project decommissioning and site restoration and maintain these funds in a bond, letter of credit, or other mechanism throughout the life of the project. The applicant noted that the financial assurance language in the draft SCA does not provide an allowance to credit the salvage value of project components in determining the size of this financial assurance and requested that this value be incorporated. The language excluding salvage credit from the financial assurance in the draft SCA was, however, intentional. Despite conditional language like that proposed by the applicant, there is still legal risk that another party withstanding could claim the salvage credit funds, which would leave FSEC to bear the remaining unfulfilled costs of decommissioning. Additionally, there is risk that reduced financial assurance funds would be insufficient to cover the cost of FSEC procuring a contractor to complete the decommissioning. FSEC has no authority to invoice these costs to other facilities under Revised Code of Washington or RCW 80.50.071. As a result, FSEC intends to follow EPA guidance on not allowing for the reduction of financial assurance to account for salvage credit. That concludes our presentation. Joanne and I are available to answer any questions that the council members may have about the RMDNS, draft SCA, or Carrier project in general. This is also the period where the council may deliberate or propose and vote on council actions. And I would also like to acknowledge that staff have received comments from council members this week prior to this meeting about Carrier. Staff believe that the concerns raised in these comments are addressed in the application materials, RMDNS, or draft SCA, or will be addressed by plans that are in development and will be complete prior to the start of construction. Thank you.
Thank you both very much. So as noted, and let me check this with council as well. My intent here as chair would be let's take questions and discussion from the council on the presentation and any specific questions you may have as to the changes that have been made or any other underlying questions I think are welcome. And then we would move to the consideration of action on a recommendation of the governor, in which we would put that on the table and then we can entertain further discussion from there if that's the appropriate way for council.
Sounds appropriate to me.
And also let me, as Sean was just noting, Councilor Childs, thank you for your dedication to feedback throughout this project, including this week. So evidently that's accompanied by a drive here. So thank you. It's a nice welcome surprise from my standpoint. So we've endeavored to, I think, address those in the presentation, but just want to acknowledge your direct input and the importance of having a county representative as well as a member of the project council here with us. So with that, I would entertain questions from any council. Since I've called you out, Mr. Charles, a little bit, you've made the longest drive, I think. I'll turn to you and see if you want to start there.
Thank you, Chair Beckett. Yeah, I do have a couple questions. First off is a question on water for the maintenance facility at the site. It's my understanding that state health department laws prohibit trucked in water for a long-term permanent basis. In my experience and personal experience in working with them, they require a permanent on-site source for a permanent facility. So it seems to me that they may be required to drill a well or something like that. Have you guys checked into that at all?
Want me to start? I haven't personally been able to identify that specific law or rule that you're referring to there. But in the application, they did indicate that that was the water sources that were available to them, meaning they were exploring the opportunity to use, well, existing water rights is what they originally wanted to do, or review the availability of municipal or other opportunities for water. And they did indicate that that was what they were going to be using. And that's what we determined to be sufficient for this project.
This is Sonia Bumpus, Councilmember Childs. Question just for clarification. Is this a rule that applies to potable water? Is this for drinking water for like on-site employees?
From my understanding, it's any time that water needs to be used for a public service, which would include on-site employees for potable water. For example, a small garage in the middle of nowhere that might service automobiles needs to have a Class B water system, which is a level water system. Just for its own employees and any guests that might come. They are not allowed to just truck in water. You can truck in water on an emergency basis. If your regular system is down due to whatever issue, then obviously trucked in water is allowable. But as a permanent long-term plan, from my understanding and working with the state health department agencies, it's not allowed.
I believe we received comments similar to this on another solar project, and I think that we had responded that there are no on-site employees. I think it had to do with potable water availability, and it might have been in that case a local government requirement. I forget, but there are no on-site employees for this facility. Is that
not regular employees
right?
Daily, but periodic?
So I think in that case, at any rate, we had that was not applicable to that project, and so I think that would be the case here.
So,
If I could just add one of the additional requirements. So the requirement that Mr. Green spoke to earlier was the requirement to confirm water availability prior to the start of construction. There is another requirement in Article 7G that speaks about confirming water availability for operational use, like potable water for site operations for staff, confirming that available prior to being allowed to start operations. For some of the solar facilities that have unpermanent intermittent staff availability. There have been instances of new connections to potable water sources. Also, and I think this is in some way distinct, although I hope you'll forgive me for not knowing the exact language, but like a water supply service that's not the same as trucking in water, but like the water coolers and stuff like that, things like that are available, are permissible for potable on-site water for these intermittently staffed sites, and that is what some facilities have done as well.
Should it, to follow up on my question, should it be determined during their search for water that a well is necessary, is that going to require a whole lot of extra hoops from the FSEC perspective, or is that going to be?
If they were to propose a new well or new water right, additional analysis and potentially an SCA amendment would be required.
My next great concern, and it isn't really addressed anywhere that I've seen, and this is my biggest concern over the whole project, is emergency response and firefighting, especially in the event of a BESS fire. County Emergency Services has stated to me repeatedly that they do not have the manpower, they do not have the funding, they do not have the equipment, they do not have the know-how to even begin to fight a BESS fire. And they are concerned that would there be a BESS fire, they would have a hard time even finding volunteers willing to go and attack it without the skills and know-how in this chemical situation. How is the applicant proposing anything at all to help with this situation? Because should there be a disaster, the county is really unprepared to address it. It's beyond the scope of anything else in the county at this point.
I can say that the BESS, the applicant has committed to providing the BESS with a fire containment system that meets all existing regulations and best response practices from, I don't remember the name of the organization, but.
National Fire Safety Association.
Yes, thank you. The National Fire Safety Association. The SCA also requires that the applicant prepare a fire response plan and emergency management plan in concert, in cooperation with the county and the local fire protection district. That will include training for their staff on how to respond to a BESS fire. As I understand, the best current practice is to essentially let the fire burn itself out as the heat of the fire denatures some of the more toxic chemicals that could otherwise spread into the ground or the air. That plan will be required to be revisited on an annual basis. The applicant has already begun the process of coordinating things with the fire chief of the local fire protection district on things like access to the project, where they'll be providing them with keys or codes to the padlock safes or the padlock gates on the perimeter fencing, and ensuring that there is sufficient spacing between the panels to allow their emergency equipment to pass through, and planning for contact procedures in the event of a fire to ensure that the applicant will have the facility monitored on a 24/7 basis, so they will be able to respond immediately if there is a fire reported by the fire protection district or by the applicant's monitoring equipment. Additionally, there is the 10,000-gallon cistern that is being imposed. While that won't be necessarily useful for putting out the fire in the BESS, because, like I said, the current best practice is to let it burn itself out, that water can be used for smoke containment, which essentially results in misting the air around the BESS fire, making connecting smoke molecules with the water molecules and having them drop so that they don't spread as far. Those are the primary mitigation measures proposed in the SCA or commitments from the applicant to address the environmental health hazards or public safety hazards associated with the BESS fire.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Also related to fire, the issue isn't just fire, it's also disaster communication. If there's a need to evacuate residents downwind in the event of a BESS fire, or to notify those residents, the county doesn't have the equipment or the ability to do that. Is the applicant suggesting any help in that department?
I don't know if anything is currently proposed in regards to notification procedures, but those two plans that I mentioned before, the fire response plan and the emergency management plan, are both subject to FSEC approval prior to their implementation, and they are required prior to the start of construction. The primary purpose of those plans is to lay out a plan of action for all involved parties in the event of a fire. Obviously, one of those is coordinating responses and informing people who might be affected. So we will make sure that the notification plan that is incorporated into those two plans is sufficient to address those concerns.
One other fire-related concern, thank you again, Mr. Green. is in the event of a fire, if the panels can be moved to as close to vertical as possible, as quickly as possible, is that being planned as part of the potential emergency plan? Because the quicker they can get to that position, the easier it is to not only fight the fire from the ground, but to fight the fire from the air. And in our environment, air fighting is, especially for any fire that grows very large, the #1 way that we're able to stop a fire quickly.
Absolutely. The panels can't be made fully vertical, so like 90 degrees to the ground, because they do pivot on the top of the pole that they are placed on. I think they can go somewhere like 78 degrees to the vertical. And because this facility will be monitored 24/7, the applicant should be able to raise the panels to their maximum vertical height instantaneously, more or less, as soon as they're made aware of the issue.
All right, I see also that I like the idea that at the end of life for the BESS facility, they're going to look at the BESS stuff to replace it with. In the recommendations in the packet, it was listed as the current recommendation is the most environmentally friendly. I'd like to request that we look at that not being the most environmentally friendly, but the safest and least prone to thermal runaway, which at the same time is going to end up being most likely the most environmentally friendly. But thermal runaway is the biggest concern. Frankly, the whole BESS thing is what scares people the most in the county. There's been way too many stories of good bulletproof systems going up in flames. I note that the chemistry being used is lithium ion, which is one of the safer chemistries out there, but that doesn't seem to stop them from going up in flames. I have done a little research with people in the know, and it seems that a lithium ion or lithium titanate is better, but perhaps those are not quite at the commercially scalable level there. They seem to be. I'm not sure. I was involved, obviously, with Carriger on choosing the battery types they've selected. It seems that lithium titanate is better. None of them have burned up. And looking 15, 20 years into the future when we replace it, it's good to see it's going to be upgraded. It's the 15 to 20 years between now and then that is the scary part. I certainly wouldn't want to live anywhere downwind of that, certainly not within 3 to 5 miles downwind. The winds change. That's a 360-degree radius that is potentially in danger. I'm not personally in that zone, but I certainly wouldn't want it that close to me, and I don't think anyone else would want it that close to them either. And that's what makes us really worried, especially about the BESS component.
Yes, and I would say the chemistry that they're using for the current BESS is lithium iron phosphate, which is considered one of the safer, more secure chemistries, even among the lithium ion grouping. As to the language in the current language discussing environmentally friendly, I think we can alter that to make sure that it does reflect that the chemistry selected should be prioritizing environmental health as well as public safety in that later version, or in the replacement BESS.
Okay, thank you.
Any further, Mr. Childs, at this point? We can give you a break if you want. And no, I'm glad we're getting through this. That was the intent of the
I'll
point,
get
so
one
please.
more before I give someone else a chance.
Okay, very good.
The screening measures along the DNR boundaries, I just wanted to clarify on those. It's listed as periodic. To me, that is a very open-ended word. Does that mean there's going to be a pile of rocks every 500 feet, which isn't really going to do much? Or does periodic mean that 30% or 50% of the view shed is screened in sections? What is the intent there? And is that properly conveyed to the applicant?
Yeah, so the desire to add the word periodic is to reflect that this is not intended to be a visual barrier. So it's not meant to be 100%. You cannot see the project from anywhere within the DNR boundary. The final design of this visual screening will be subject to FSEC approval. FSEC's intent for this mitigation is to reduce visual impacts of the project when seen from the northern boundary of the DNR parcel to less than significant. So that will be the standard to which the applicant will be held, and they have been made aware of that. As to the specific percentage of how much of that view is going to be blocked, that's going to be part of the discussion as we develop the design for this, and it will be dependent on what types of visual screening are used and what combination. And we will continue our consultation with WDFW as well to make sure that whatever final design does not negatively impact other resources, such as, like I mentioned, wildlife movement and water runoff.
I'll give someone else a chance before I go back again.
Thank you, Mr. Charles. Other council members, comments or questions for the briefing that's currently before us? See any currently, so Mr. Charles, if you've got others, we're happy to working through the list here for a little bit longer.
I wanted to talk a little bit about light pollution. The Goldendale area is striving to be a dark sky community. We lost our status of that about 5 years ago, and we're trying to get it back. So as part of that, I would like to see the specific recommendations in VI1. Note that we are seeking international dark sky status and that all lighting must strictly comply with shielding requirements, and that high intensity lights not only be avoided, but just not be used. Kind of strengthen that language. A big problem for dark sky is reflecting stuff off of parking lots and things like that. I don't think there's going to be a lot of paved parking areas, and cement, white cement reflects very well. So that's probably not going to be a huge issue. But if we keep the lights low intensity instead of higher intensity, that will also keep them from reflecting, and shielded so that you can't see from the side or obviously the top any light. The light is coming out of the bottom of the unit.
Yeah, we can check the language, but I'm pretty sure that the lighting commitments from the applicant are that the lights will be downward facing, will be shielded, and will be low intensity. As to cement, the only cement that will be used above ground on the project is the base of the BES. The parking areas and roads, access roads will all be gravel.
Yeah, they'll probably need a handicap parking area at the maintenance facility, but that'll just be one slot.
If I may, Councilmember Childs, the language in the current SCA does mention minimizing outdoor lighting to limiting that to meeting safety and security requirements, and that the lights would avoid high intensity lights and would be downward directed lighting in line with what you're suggesting.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Hoffmeyer. I was concerned about just avoiding versus banning completely high intensity. Maybe there's areas where high intensity would be required. I can't imagine it personally, but I'm not in that business. So, the other thing that I wanted to talk about was noise of BES units. And I see that the BES noise units or the BES noise levels are required to meet Washington State standards, which is good, but those standards, I believe, are probably designed for urban areas. Rural areas are much quieter, and anything above 40 decibels is audible in a rural area. I would like to see it strengthened so that the noise is below 40 decibels at any adjacent residences that are not part of the application. 40 decibels seems very quiet. If you go out at night, 40 decibels is the level of crickets. When there is no freeway and background noise, 40 decibels is pretty loud at night. And so it seems excessive, but for the rural quality of life that people are used to, I think it's important that we limit those as low as possible. 40 decibels from the units, which are already spaced quite a distance from residences, should be an achievable and realistic goal. If the fans can't do that, they're too loud. One other thing that I want to mention, although I don't think there's anything that can be done about it at this point, is
Mr. Childs, through the chair, if we just get a response on I just don't know where it was in the document and what the
Thank you.
done to research that. Thank you. That's okay.
Yeah, I haven't looked at the noise studies done by the applicant recently, so I don't know. I don't know how far off they may be from that, but that's something we can look into as to whether that guideline is already being met or whether it can't be met.
I'll just add that when the environmental review was done, we do look at local standards, whatever the local requirements are for addressing noise limits. FSEC also looks at WAC 173-60, which lays out maximum permissible environmental noise levels. And those are between 55 and 60 decibels. So this is, I know we don't have this information right in front of us to answer the question now, but these would have certainly been the bar we would have started with.
Yeah.
Which isn't very far from the 40, where does the 40 come from?
The 40 comes from actually standing outside with a decibel meter at night.
But are there standards somewhere that we can look at where these are?
I don't know of any written standards, and I think you're right, Ms. Bumpus, about the state standards being in the 55 to 60 decibel level. The difference is, if your neighbors have a party and you can hear it at night, that's fine, but it's not every single night, all year round. And that's where the difference comes in. If you're living in an urban area like this and you go outside at night, the background noise of the highway is probably 50 to 60 decibels anywhere, even right outside the building here. However, in a rural area, we don't have those background noises. So when we add a brand new background noise, it makes a big difference to the quality of life. Now, if the noise is 50 to 60 decibels at the unit, that's probably going to meet the standard at houses farther away. Because it's set back, I can't remember the exact setback of the best from the nearest house. But if it doesn't meet it, and I think their units are frankly too loud, you shouldn't be able to hear them at the nearest residential house.
We appreciate that input for sure, and I can share that having grown up in a rural community, so I have a sense of that, what you say. Obviously, if it's a standard of which, or monitor of which you've experimented, or it's a more formal version, if that's different from the Washington standard, that certainly probably creates a certain constraint for FSEC, but I think it's one that's in general worthy of highlighting because its best units move into different places than maybe they were traditionally. That's certainly something that FSEC I think would be prepared to help elevate to an appropriate authority in the state, given it's a broader issue in addition to this specific project issue. Given you noted best units have been located kind of with noise in mind in terms of their location, but for other safety reasons too. I'm sure the staff can get into if need be. That I guess I would just encourage if there's any additional discussion with the applicant on how best to achieve what may already have been achieved, but to just kind of further affirm that for the community. I appreciate we're from that one. Unless you have other comments, so. So anyway, we don't want to hold you up.
Oh,
Make
no,
sure we
that's fine. We need to
get through
discuss these as
get through the
necessary.
project here.
The other thing that, in particular, I wanted to mention, in the county, as we have been, and this, again, is probably not applicable to this project, but I'd like to bring it forward into the record and going forward, as we are working on our new solar and BESS ordinance in the county. One of the things that we have discovered is that agrivoltaics works. And it is a shame that this project is not including agrivoltaics, which is mixed agriculture with the solar. Really, the only thing that needs to happen to make it happen is the panels need to be raised up a little so that either field operations or animals can go underneath. When we take farmland out of production for solar, we are not looking to our future. I think solar is an important part of the future of this state, but we have to keep as much agricultural land in production as possible as we move forward in solar. And it would certainly be my hope that agrivoltaics is an integral part of all solar projects moving forward. We plan on it being an integral part of all solar projects, at least in Klickitat County, moving forward. The fact that the Carriger project is not going to have any agrivoltaics involved in it, as far as I can see, is going to really hinder the acceptance of solar in places like Klickitat County, because even though the setbacks are good, fences are good, I think they're doing a pretty good job with wildlife passages. The fact that it takes land out of production that could be also coexisting with agriculture is people are going to look at that and say, well, that's industry nevertheless. And I believe that solar should be a complement to agriculture. It can be something that can add income to struggling farms and ranches, and at the same time meet the needs of people throughout the state who need electricity, and it can complement and coexist. And I'm sad to see that this project was not proposed with that in mind at the beginning. And unless they have a big change of heart in the next few months, it seems unlikely that it's going to turn out that way. But I would encourage any solar project to move that way. Also, as part of our new solar and BESS ordinance in the county, in the solar part, we are, as in a way to incentivize agrivoltaics, if your solar project does not involve agrivoltaics, then the actual solar panels, the fenced off area for your project and the impervious surfaces cannot be more than 20% of the project. I haven't run the figures exactly, but the Carriger project is about 60% of the area is fenced off. Now, we would allow a 60% fenced off for solar if it also had agrivoltaics under our new county ordinance that is still in the works. These things can be incentivized so that solar can be a big plus instead of only a little plus. Again, solar is needed, but agriculture is also needed. And doing solar without agriculture is unfortunately a very short-sighted view of the future. That is my spiel on agrivoltaics. And I think I have, the only last beef that I really need to bring up is...
We're not vegetarians.
Yeah. Somebody maybe. As we have seen, this project has been eminently opposed by a lot of vocal people in the county. I know there's people in the county who are in favor of solar, or at least a landowner's right to put solar on their place. But a lot of people in the county have felt very run over by this process. I am going to say that I really appreciate the setbacks and the work that you guys have done to try and minimize things. But the voice of the people is also important, and no one has taken a poll, but it's running really against solar in our area, and probably in a lot of other rural areas like us too. And I'm not sure how to change that. I think instead of having a solar farm which doesn't have any farm in it, we need to put some farm in it, and that's going to help in the future. But if we don't change this perspective and somehow resell solar, it's going to lose, and the whole state and even the whole country is going to be bad off for it. I think solar is a necessary part of our future. But if we can't get the support of people, it's not going to happen. The people in Klickitat County have spoken so far, unfortunately, very much against solar. But I need to listen to their voice. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that's all I have for now.
Okay. Well, something else comes to mind, please nudge me, speak up. We'll entertain other questions. Let me just maybe close off on a broad comment first, if I may. Oh, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to circle back, if I may, to Councilmember Child's comment about the noise. I did pull up the acoustic modeling, and obviously this is modeling, but the modeling for both participating and non-participating residences expects that most readings looks like will be in the 30s. There's some in the 40s. The range is from 28 to 53, with the vast majority of them being in the 30s and low 40s. So just to let you know that that information is in attachment H.
Thank you, Ms. Hoffman.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hofkammer. And thank you again for your diligence in this. And while we're at FSEC not here to sell solar by any means, obviously we have to respond to the applications that come before us. And
yes.
I appreciate your diligence in that. I would just quickly note, out of deference to the other council, I certainly believe one of the best answers is, what is the local pathway, right? What are the other local options other than FSEC or the Department of Ecology? Because those are the three choices, at least currently in Washington. So if there's other follow-up when we're allowed, appropriately to have those conversations, I certainly happy to make the trip, to dig in on exactly that topic. And I certainly agree on the agrivoltaics certainly as well. Not that that's something that I think FSEC can always, say to the applicant as it's on the table, but I do want to acknowledge, it is an important element. And it's my understanding, at least, that in Klickitat County, there's certainly an existing, at least one solar project that has subsequently had the reintroduction of sheep, in this case, to maintain grass control on the site within the boundary.
Yes.
So, to the degree that as projects and ultimately, in concert between FSEC or the applicant in this case, certainly always welcome those evolutions as projects continue to live in the communities in which they're sited. So with that, thank you, my fellow council members, for indulging me, and would entertain other questions on the briefing that we've had. Comments, suggestions? Okay. Hearing none and seeing none on screen. I have been watching. Staff's helping me keep an eye on that too. So with that, I will then move to entertain a recommendation to the governor, if that is the wishes of the council. And since this is my first time on a site certificate agreement recommendation, are we moving this on to the agenda first, council? Shall we have any further comment from council on the draft SCA? So do we need it on the table as a motion to consider and take discussion?
Yeah, what I would suggest is
is that if a council member wishes to do so, to make a motion. Well, let me ask this. I think there are two, there's the draft site certification agreement, there's the recommendation. I think those are being considered as a single package.
Yes.
So, yeah, if there were a motion to approve that recommendation and
Right,
supporting
the
draft
recommendation
FCA,
report and the draft site certification agreement.
yes, then you could, yeah, entertain comments after that motion.
Okay. I do have some legal approved language if other council would like to have the benefit of that. Sorry. Provide that as far as how we best have this on the record officially, but would there be a motion to entertain this site certification agreement? Here's language if that helps, not to put you on the spot, Stacy. I'll make sure we get this appropriately read.
This is Stacy Brewster. I move to approve the draft site certification agreement as amended, including edits discussed during today's meeting, and the report recommending the governor approve the Carriger Solar project located in Klickitat County.
Is there a second to the motion? I'll second. Thank you, Councilman. There's a motion on the table and has been seconded. Let me note for the record, the language is clear just to make sure that all our appropriate legal and public process measures are taken. The council is now going to begin a full discussion as desired on what is on the table. And so if there are other edits, amendments by the council, that is part of our process. So I want to just acknowledge that. And we can adapt the motion if need be accordingly, much as I think the matters are fairly clear on the table here. So with that, I see Councilman Young has his hand up, although since you helped close this up, Councilman Pamplin, did you have a question?
I'll circle back it. I mean, look to Council Brewster if he wants to speak to her motion, and I can speak.
Okay. Yeah. All right, Council Young, you are, is it okay, Council Pamplin, or did you want to make your?
Let's go ahead.
Okay, Council Young, please. Thanks for your patience. See your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to make sure we're very clear on what we're voting for, since the motion refers not only to the written documents that council received at 12:35 p.m. today, but also referenced changes made during this meeting. Reflecting on the preceding discussion, did any of that amount to a specific change in the language we received earlier this afternoon? And if so, could that be clearly stated what those changes were?
We have not taken any changes in the meeting today, just to be clear. I realize you're asking about the amended document. I believe Ms. Hofkemeyer is going to provide a clarifying comment, or Director Bumpus here in a moment. And basically, Councilor Young, we can do either. I appreciate you calling which is on the table. Today, it is on the table as the documents entered this meeting. So that is what's on the table, but staff can help me out, I'm sure, further.
So if this is not in keeping with what the council prefers, certainly we can change course. But in keeping track of the items discussed so far, some of the items staff have made note to incorporate their consideration in the fire plan as identified in the draft SCA. But those items would be addressed in the draft plan, or in the plan prior to approval, not necessarily the language in the documents today. A suggested change in the language regarding battery chemistry can be made with where the language currently resides, which is in the revised MDNS. And that can be incorporated as staff makes the other change that Mr. Green spoke to earlier when we finalized the document to incorporate the term periodic. We can also incorporate the language regarding the battery chemistry to consider public health and safety as well. That can be done. Staff can commit to doing that, but that is not something that we have identified that needs to be changed in the draft SCA or recommendation report.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was asking, is whether there have been any changes to the report or the draft SCA that make it different than what council was sent earlier today.
No, the answer is no. Yeah.
Can you hear that? So no changes from what was sent earlier today, just to clarify for everybody's benefit. Other comments, questions, discussion?
Mr. Chair, we're in the kind of the deliberation phase of this agenda item. You know, something I really appreciate your line of questions and your comments, Mr. Childs, relative to this project, and in particular calling out the very vocal local opposition to the project. And one of the things that I'm trying to reconcile, and I would just appreciate hearing your perspective as a resident of the county, is a majority of this project is within the county's energy overlay zone. And so can you help me reconcile about, you know, the local government has endorsed energy being sited in this area, and then the opposition from, you know, is the county government opposed to an energy project within their energy overlay zone?
Yes, thank you. I will address that. This is Mike Childs again for the record. Yes, the energy overlay zone, when it was first conceived and put together approximately 20 years ago, was mostly focused on wind. And wind was the big industry coming in, and we wanted to encourage wind at that time. And solar was seen as something on the horizon. And at that point, no one really envisioned any solar operation greater than maybe 20 or 40 acres. And that sort of scale is different than something covering 1,600 acres. The site that was chosen is in the energy overlay zone, but the main reason that it's a beneficial site is because of its proximity to the Big Eddy substation there on Knight Road. Other than that, it can be argued, and has been argued, that it's not a very good location for something that's going to be as visually intrusive as a non-agriculture solar site is. It's very close to town. It's on the side of a long, broad hill that can be seen for miles around in probably about 270-degree direction. So it's very visible, not just for the people who are right there, but for people who are quite a long ways away. It's not a hidden site at all. So yeah, the county is opposed to it. Every county commissioner I've ever talked to has been opposed to this location. The two county commissioners who came on record to various meetings and have talked about it have both been very against it. We only have 3 county commissioners. Again, they're not opposed to solar per se, and as has already been mentioned, we have a very large solar project in the east part of the county, which is very sparsely populated. So there's areas in the county that are more suitable to solar than the Goldendale Valley. And there's probably even areas within the Goldendale Valley that are more suitable to solar. There are areas in the Goldendale Valley which are isolated sub-valleys, or are areas that are really not very developed. I can think of a ridge near where I live that only has impassable wind-wet roads to get to it. So there's not a lot of people who can see it, and there's probably several thousand acres back there that could be potentially developed for solar. So there's other areas around, but right now the county has knee-jerk responded, in my opinion, and the whole valley is off limits to solar. per ordinance right now. We're working on changing that, but even with our new solar ordinance, it's likely that the whole valley is going to stay off limits. I would like to see the valley, at least in areas that would meet the criteria of our new solar ordinance, be open to solar, but I don't foresee that politically happening in the near future. So yeah, and that whole response of the county to ban solar is unfortunately a result of the Carriger project being a large solar spot sited very close to town. Again, I think solar is good, and I think solar can coexist with agriculture, but this location not coexisting with agriculture has a lot of people really upset.
Thank you, Mr. Towns. Appreciate it. Other comments or questions from the council? Council Young or anyone else I'm missing? Okay. Well, let me restate then the motion that's on the table. So the motion is to approve the draft site certification agreement as amended, and the report recommending that the governor approve the Carriger solar project located in Klickitat County. So that is the motion. Any further discussion before I call the question? Okay, hearing none. All those.
Mr. Chair, can I request a roll call vote?
That would seem just fine. Do so.
Amy said she got the deadbolt. She can't get the key out of the deadbolt.
We address that, I'm sure. Perhaps Ms.
Can't get it
Burke,
out.
you would host to be prepared to call the Carriger Project Council. We've all been there, whoever that was found themselves to be, so don't worry.
Okay, Chair, this is Andrew Grantham. I can call the roll for vote.
The Carriger Project Council,
Correct. Okay, first
do
of
so.
all, I'll go ahead.
please do so.
Yes, FSEC Chair Kurt Beckett,
Chair votes aye.
Department of Commerce Elizabeth Osborne,
Aye.
Department of Ecology Eli Levitt, I will move on. Department of Fish and Wildlife Nate Pamplin,
Aye.
Department of Natural Resources Lenny Young,
Aye.
Utilities and Transportation Commission Stacy Brewster,
Aye.
and then for Carriger Solar Klickitat County Matt Childs.
Nay.
I will go back to Department of Ecology. I know that Eli Levitt was here during the original roll call. Are you here right now, Mr. Levitt? I'm not hearing anything, Chair, but if Councilmember Levitt were to say nay, there would still be a quorum for the ayes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
As long as that's Council Levitt, which I believe
Yes, it is.
We're having trouble hearing you. I think you said aye, but if you could repeat for the record, we'd appreciate it.
Yes, I said aye.
Thank you, Council.
So there are 6 ayes and 1 nay.
Thank you, Ms. Grantham. Thank you, Council. The motion passes. The Carriger Solar Project will advance to the governor. I do want to acknowledge, and especially, as I probably would have done with you online, but especially sitting next to you, Council Childs, that the work is ultimately not over. Obviously, very critical decisions have been reached here, and so I want to acknowledge both those things. But FSEC, one of the benefits of FSEC is, I would say, it's a swaddle to grave place. And so, our projects ultimately have a continued accountability, which we see as a two-way street, both with staff and working with our projects. But certainly would anticipate exactly that in this going forward. And obviously a lot of important work by our applicant to proceed should eventually this project ultimately be approved. Obviously, we're not the final decision maker here as council, but certainly lots have gone into this recommendation. So appreciate everyone's time and participation and all the diligent work that goes with this, and that there's flexibility, as mentioned in various plans, as they are adopted. So,
Can I speak real briefly?
please.
This is Matt Childs from Clickett County for the record. I do want to thank the council for their help in this, and the many adjustments that have been made to the original plan, which I think are going to make this project much better as finally approved than as originally proposed. I feel like my voice was heard, and although my involvement with the council, I think, is probably going to be done after today, or assuming that the governor signs this, we shall find out. It has been a pleasure, and I have learned a lot, and thank you for the opportunity.
Appreciate that, Councilor Childs. And as I said earlier, look forward, when appropriate, if there's a willingness for further conversation, I look forward to that day. So with that, I will find our agenda again. We will continue to move on a few other project updates. Thank you, Council. And I'm sorry, Council Young. We will not move on until you've spoken.
Thank you. I would just like to thank very much Councilmember Childs for the great job he did expressing the county's perspectives. I learned a lot from everything you said, Councilmember Childs, and really appreciate it. I think you did a very eloquent and admirable job of representing the county's perspectives and concerns. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Young.
Thank you both. Okay, moving on to the Horse Heaven Wind Project update. Ms. Moon.
Good afternoon, Council Chair Beckett and FSEC council members. As stated, this is Amy Moon reporting on the Horse Heaven Wind Project. FSEC staff continued to work on an addendum to the Horse Heaven Wind Farm Final Environmental Impact Statement, or final EIS, in response to the certificate holder identifying the Department of Natural Resources, or DNR, Gould Well, Gould, as their water source for construction and operation. As indicated in my May council update, the public comment period on the addendum to the Horse Heaven Wind Project final EIS was open May 5th through the 19th. Due to technical difficulties viewing the comments, I reported at the May council meeting that FSEC received comments from 3 individuals expressing general opposition to the project and concern over the use of this water source for non-agricultural purposes. However, in addition to those comments, FSEC received comments from the DNR, Tri-City Cares, that's C, all capitals CARES or TCC, regarding lease conditions, procedural processes, and a change from agricultural use to an access road and parking for Gould Well. No changes were made to the addendum document other than updating the document as the final addendum to the final environmental impact statement to document and conclude the EIS addendum process. FSEC determined that the new information and analysis for Gould Well as the water source does not substantially change the final EIS analysis of significant impacts and alternatives, and that an addendum was appropriate for documenting this review under SEPA. Does the council have any questions?
Council members, questions, comments? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to the Hop Hill Solar Project. Mr. Taylor.
This is Trevor Taylor on behalf of John Barnes, FSEC staff for the Hop Hill application. Continue to coordinate and review the application with our contractor, contracted agencies, and tribal governments. Are there any questions?
Questions, council? Hearing none. Taylor, let's move on to Wallula Gap, please.
Thank you, Chair Beckett and council members. This is Trevor Taylor on behalf of John Barnes, FSEC staff for the Wallula Gap application. FSEC staff met with the applicant on May 22nd, 25 to discuss their interest in pausing their application with FSEC for site certification due to ongoing connectivity difficulties with Bonneville Power Administration. The option was proposed by FSEC to the applicant to continue to keep the application open to allow SEPA work and TCP studies to be completed. The applicant has expressed their interest in pausing the application after this work has been completed, likely towards the late fall of 2025 time period. Staff met with Department of Ecology and the applicant's wetland consultant, Jeff Gray, on June 24th, 2025, to conduct a wetlands verification for the site. The site visit completed ongoing wetland site verification for this application. Continue to coordinate and review the application with our contractor, contracted agencies, and tribal governments. Are there any questions?
Council, questions, comments? Okay. We'll move on to the GoldenEye BEST project. Ms. Snarsky.
Thank you, Chair Beckett. This is Joanne Snarsky, the siting specialist assigned to GoldenEye Battery Energy Storage Facility in Skagit County. Staff are working to continue with our partnering agencies to review and seek information on the application for site certification. This month, US Solar, the developer for GoldenEye project, sent us a response to our third data request sent to them back in March 2025. We are in the process of evaluating their responses. I have no other updates.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Hearing none. Moving on to the transmission PIS, Mr. Green.
Good afternoon, Chair Beckett and council members. This is Sean Green, SEPA Specialist for FSEC. Since the last council meeting, staff have completed a series of usability tests for the programmatic EIS. These 9 testing sessions involved FSEC staff working with external industry and regulatory staff to present common anticipated use case scenarios for the programmatic EIS and having those external resources work through the draft programmatic EIS in an attempt to identify potential points of confusion or navigation difficulty that could be addressed in the final programmatic EIS. FSEC staff continues to work with our consultant, WSP, to make edits, revisions, and refinements to the draft programmatic EIS in response to comments received during the public comment period and the usability testing sessions. FSEC staff and WSP are also working to prepare supplemental checklists, manuals, and tools that would facilitate future use of the programmatic EIS. FSEC staff had received a 90-day extension for our contract to complete work on the final programmatic EIS from the Department of Enterprise Services, and we currently anticipate publishing the final programmatic EIS in late September of 2025. Are there any questions?
Mr. Green. Questions, anyone? Thanks for the ongoing work and all those projects. Okay. So that would take us to Desert Claim.
Again, good afternoon, Council Chair Beckett and FSEC council members. This is Amy Moon reporting on the Desert Claim Wind Power Project. Their May 13th request to terminate the Desert Claim Wind Project Site Certification Agreement known as the SCA. I updated the council on this termination request from the project proponent, Desert Claim Wind Power LLC, in my May 21st update. Following the May council meeting, in coordination with our Assistant Attorney General, staff prepared resolution number 356 as amendment number 3 to the Desert Claim Wind Power Project Site Certification Agreement to terminate the project. To recap Desert Claim's request, the certificate holder did not commence facility construction, that no longer sees a path to financing construction, and wishes to terminate the SCA. The resolution before you today includes the background, procedural status, discussion, and FSEC staff recommendation that the request for termination be granted. I do have a few edits to apply to the draft resolution that I want to point out to the council. In the procedural status section on page 2, we clarified that the ordinarily applicable criteria for amendment of SCAs have no practical application to the certificate holder to request by adding the qualifying word termination. In addition, the resolution was updated to reflect that one comment was received during the June 16th through 22nd public comment period on this resolution. And finally, on page 3 of the resolution, the duplicate project name, Desert Claim, was removed, and we clarified the resolution grants Desert Claim Wind Power's termination request. As stated previously, the one comment received on the draft resolution number 356 during the public comment period did not prompt any changes in the draft resolution other than to propose editing the draft resolution to reflect that one comment was received in the procedural status section of the resolution. Does any other staff have anything to add? Does the council have any questions?
Council, questions or discussion? I do not, as chair. Very well, then we do have this on our agenda as noticed for action or potential action. So the chair would entertain a motion to approve draft resolution 356 as amended to terminate the Desert Claim Site Certificate Agreement as requested by Desert Claim Wind Power LLC. Is there a motion accordingly?
Elizabeth Osborne, so moved.
Lenny Young, second.
Thank you. Motion is on the table and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor of approving the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Approval of Desert Claim Termination Agreement. Thank you. So we will next move into our other category, number 6. And we'll have a council delegation of authority to the FSEC director topic, in this case, a briefing on that topic. Let me note as chair, including that there was a comment submitted to the record highlighting, I believe, of the interdependency between this policy and the Horse Heaven project, of which I've recused myself as chair. And so I just want to state for the record that given there may be differing views of how related at least a piece of this policy is to Horse Heaven, I certainly believe an abundance of caution is appropriate here, and so would intend to recuse myself as chair from any detailed discussion of the policy as well as its consideration by the council in terms of approval or amendment, et cetera. So I will not be a part of that process. My role here today is to serve as chair and facilitate said briefing and discussion by the council. So just note that for council and the public and the record. With that, Director Bumpus, to you. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair Beckett, and good afternoon, council members. So as Chair Beckett mentioned, we had planned to potentially take action. We flagged it as a potential action item for the council to consider today, but today we'll just do this briefing. I'll provide some information about the policy and the changes, and what I would propose is that we plan to move it to the July agenda. So we will proceed with it, but a couple of comments as to why I'd like to do that. So the policy 16-01 is a policy that delegates authority to the, it used to say manager of FSEC, to review and approve facility plans for construction and operation. And so there are a number of reasons we need to update the plan, and it's actually sort of overdue, really, to update this policy. FSEC became an independent agency in 2022, and as I mentioned earlier, it refers to the FSEC manager. Now, there's no longer an FSEC manager, it's an executive director. So we need to change that. The other thing that we need to address in the updated policy is the different types of facility plans that we're seeing implemented for facilities that we've more recently permitted. Historically, FSEC hasn't had very many projects, and so the types of facility plans that we saw were relatively limited, but as our regulatory purview has expanded, now we have clean energy manufacturing facilities, green hydrogen. We're seeing several more applications coming in for alternative energy facilities. We're seeing different types of plan requirements that we need to make sure we address. And so we've put forth those changes that were sent to you in the draft. We did put this out for public comment, and in looking at those comments, there were some concerns that we're sensitive to. We had posted the document, but we had not shown the document and track changes to show that, how we were revising the policy, updating the policy. We do see it as mostly housekeeping, just to, update these plans. There is a change in there that has to do with recommendations that come from an advisory committee or group, such as like the PTAG for Horse Heaven or Technical Advisory Committee for, say, Wild Horse Wind Farm. So we were trying to also address that and include the recommendations. But as I said before, the document wasn't posted out there for the comment period that showed what it looked like before and what it looks like after the changes. So what I'd like to do is make sure we take a careful look at all of the comments, provide the public an opportunity to see the document in the underlined strike through so they can see what it used to look like and what we're proposing to change in it. We really don't see it as being a big shift from the prior policy, which was approved in 2016, I think was the last time this policy was updated by the council. So we see this mostly as housekeeping. But go ahead and post that and then plan to take it up at the July meeting. And in the meantime, I spoke with our legal counsel about this. Also take a look at the comments and provide input to the council from our AAG if there's anything substantive there that we need to relay to the council before they take up this item. So if that sounds good, I think that that'd be a good way to proceed. And of course, happy to answer any questions about this plan or approach. And John Thompson's also here. We've discussed this plan. I discussed it with him, and I think he supports this too. So.
Thank you for the briefing. Are there comments or questions of the council or staff? I know several of the council have been in touch with the staff and certainly sending questions and feedback as far as the discussion. So as is appropriate on an individual basis. And if there are any of those questions that need to be raised here for clarification, let me just check that again. Understand if not. Obviously, staff are available both from a public access standpoint as well as council, of course, between now and the next meeting unto itself as well. So last call for any comments or questions.
This is Stacy Brewster. I would say I appreciate the extra time we're allowing for this process. There was quite a bit of concern brought up by the public, and I appreciate that we're going to allow extra time to take care of that.
Appreciate that. And I would agree. Thank you. Okay, then we will close that item and we will move on to our final item. And thank you for the extra time today, given the busy agenda. Next is the website update. Dave Walker will present on that item. I will just say at the outset, I'm excited that this day has arrived. And I am the official recipient of the benefit of leadership and work on this, both from staff as well as acknowledge prior chair and other council who may have had some role in this. I think it's a key part in any organization, but especially one like FSEC in terms of public transparency and access and ease of use. To the degree there are some startup aspects and feedback, I'm sure Dave will cover some of what we have or how we anticipate the launch continuing. It's certainly just part of the effort to make it as accessible as possible. I just want to acknowledge too that from a process standpoint, FSEC does work under some, I think, unique number of statutes as a result of its kind of unique scope and authority in the state, and as a result, the public process that accompanies that is often not intuitive in terms of when public comments have to happen before an action or after an action, and that does not always, I think, retail very well at the ground level. And I just want to acknowledge that. I think those are issues that we're all committed to working on and improving. I think things like this tool are ultimately a day-to-day essential, but I think they will play a role in that, hopefully a larger evolution that just makes this, again, a consistent and transparent and accessible agency for those who participate in it and those who are living with us too. So with that, Mr. Walker.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair Beckett. Council members, for the record, Dave Walker, Interim Director of Administrative Services. This morning at 7 a.m., we launched our new website. I would like to point out that this was a 9-month effort that literally took hundreds of hours of staff time in not only the organization and development, but all of the key pieces behind the scenes that needed to occur for a large project such as this. Essentially, we did a complete redesign of the website, making the information, I think, easier to find and much more clear for the public and for our stakeholders that go to the site to find the information. Some of the key pieces, we put the upcoming events very clearly on the landing page towards the top of the website to make it very simple to see what the upcoming events are scheduled, say, for the next month, 2 months out. Project pages, I think, are much more clear as well, actually showing the phase of where the project is within the process, as well as the energy types being drawn out. All of the project-specific information is also housed within those particular areas as well, which also makes it much easier to navigate the new website and find the information. As we move forward, we've now entered the stabilization period, which is probably going to take a good 2 to 3 months for us to really get through. We have a punch list of approximately 45 items that we need to follow up on at this point that we'll be doing in the background during that stabilization period. But there is definitely more to come, not only with the stabilization piece, but as we grow the agency and we grow the website to meet the needs of not only the agency, but our customers and our stakeholders as well. So this is a very, very exciting time, and I'm just very proud of all of our staff that stepped in, rolled up their sleeves, and made this happen in addition to their regular jobs. So it was quite a lift. And the one thing that I did want to repeat as well, and Chair, you mentioned this at the beginning of the meeting, the email address, if anyone is having issues accessing the website, is webhelp, W-E-B as in boy, H-E-L-P @fsec.wa.gov. So, thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations to all the staff most closely wedded into this, which is really all the staff, I realize, but there are a few individuals in particular that perhaps will find a more formal means to thank at another time by name, full form. But Director Bumpus, unless there's other, either on this topic or others, I would kind of turn to you to help close us out here.
Well, thank you, Chair Beckett. Council, just to thank the staff, all the staff that pulled together to complete the website project. As Mr. Walker noted, the work's not done. We have a number of things that we need to do, but it was a tremendous workload, and everybody pulled together and contributed input into getting this project finished. And I'm very, very happy with where we are and very proud of everyone's contributions, even with our very heavy workload. So lots of appreciation for all of that work and effort.
Thank you. Congratulations. More work to come, but still a big day.
Right.
Are there other council comments or any closing?
Chair, this is Andrea Grantham. I'll just make a quick update from Ellie Smith in chat. She was mentioning that the email to contact isn't web help, it's actually website help at fsec.wa.gov.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So again, website help at fsec.wa.gov is the email specific to any assistance with the website. There's a search and I think a help function on the site anyway, but specific issues here in the near term, you can send it website help at fsec.wa.gov. So any last council questions, comments? Okay, then at 3:23, we are adjourned from our June meeting.